All right, this week in number 505, underwater model photography. All right, guys, this is going to be a good show. I mean, I'm looking forward to doing this. We were just chatting in the green room offline that there's a lot of interesting things to talk about. The number one thing that I want to talk about is, let me mute this thing, is underwater model photography, but also SpaceX. Right, so we're gonna go into SpaceX because I'm sorry, I'm a nerd, and I can't not talk about SpaceX and what went on yesterday, and then we're gonna talk about some drone stuff. Not any new product releases, but some arguably negative things that happened. Craig, I know you just got a new device in. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. Yes, we'll talk about that a little bit. This is not a drone show, so people that are like, oh, this is going to be another TWiP about drones. This is not a TWiP about drones. This is about some unfortunate side effects of lack of brain cells that we're going to talk about. Then we'll talk about some other things. Anyway, so you guys ready? You ready to start the show?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Here we go. All right. Let me bring my little notes up here so I know what I'm talking about. All right, here we go. And welcome back to another episode of TWiP. This is your source for grown-up photography news and conversation. Joining me this week to discuss some of the biggest photo stories that are affecting photographers around the globe are Mr. Craig Colvin and Mr. Craig Stampley. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hello. How you doing?
Glad to be back.
It's good to have both of you guys. So, Craig, you've been on recently, so I'm going to skip over you first. Then I'm going to come back to you. But we have a new face in the TWiP family, an accomplished underwater photographer, and some other genres as well, as we'll get into. Mr. Craig Stampley, welcome to This Week in Photo. How you doing, man?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is fantastic. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be a fun show for a lot of reasons. Now, give us a little background on Craig Stampley, and and I'm going to use your first and last name because we have two Craigs on the show.
No, fair enough.
So, give me some Craig Stampley history.
Okay, I'm based in Brisbane. I'm a full-time freelance photographer, trying to do my own thing, shooting whatever I can, and having a good time doing it. Work from home, but I do a bit of traveling. I did a wedding last year in France, trying to do some more weddings here in and around Brisbane and Queensland, playing with models in the pool, anything like that, motorsport, anything to do with taking photos, that's where I want to be.
It sounds like anything to do with taking photos that's a challenge, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. Recently with a friend of mine, we've started a little company, and we're going to take photographers out for like extended workshops or all-day workshops out of Brisbane. Or tourists who want to get out of the city and don't know where to go. Yeah. We're taking people out and showing them what Brisbane and Queensland has to offer. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty good place to live.
Well, I got to say, my experience with doing hangouts and live streams and Skype calls with people that are in Australia has been challenging because of bandwidth issues, but for some reason your bandwidth seems excellent. So I'm very happy.
it slowly gets better. We put in a cable line here, which is not that fast compared to the US. I think we get about 35 or 36 down and about 1 up.
That's not too
enough. No, it's not too bad. It's good enough for me at home at the moment. It's lunchtime for me here in Brisbane. So kids are at school and my wife's at work. So there's no Netflix happening at the moment.
Well, awesome. Well, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. The other Craig Colvin is on the show. Craig's also I don't want to call you guys underwater photographers because it sounds like it pigeonholes you into one genre. You do all kinds of photography. Underwater photography is just one of them. Craig, you do that and a bunch of other things. You've painted models. You've lit them on fire. You put them underwater. You do all kinds of stuff.
The key thing there is models. I'm primarily a model photographer.
Okay.
So, okay. That's the common thread among pretty much all of my photography.
Awesome. Good. Well, welcome back to the show, man. It's always good to have your perspective. All right. So if you've listened to any of this new batch of TWiPs, you know that the TWiP is now kind of shifted things to have a topic anchor on each episode. So we still do the weekly roundup of news, but then the main thrust of the discussion is on a main topic. In this case, it's underwater model photography with these two experts. We'll get to a live chat Q&A section where we'll dive into the chat room. We've got lots of chatter going on in there. Our community manager, Christopher Berry, is in there fielding questions and holding it down. Thanks, Chris. And we'll just dive into the show. So the first thing, before we get into the underwater model photography discussion, the first thing in the news that I want to talk about is what I alluded to before we started broadcasting, and that's SpaceX, right? So Elon Musk, SpaceX, Elon Musk is, like we were saying, he's kind of the Tony Stark of the current real world, doing all these cool things with seemingly infinite amounts of fundage to do this stuff. But the cool thing that one of his companies, SpaceX, did yesterday was they launched Falcon Heavy, this basically a giant, currently the largest rocket, right? The largest, I believe, was a Saturn V, Saturn IV?
That's correct. Yeah, Saturn V. Yeah.
Saturn V was the largest. This is not as big. The Falcon Heavy was not as large as that one, but that one's no longer in operation. So this Falcon Heavy is the largest operational space launch vehicle on this planet, at least. Maybe some other planets have larger ones, but this planet, this is the largest one. So I want to talk about that. I want to acknowledge that, first of all, because what they did, if you haven't watched it, go get on YouTube, Google it, and watch the launch and then the landing of the two booster rockets, because that was historic. Because SpaceX is known for reusing their rockets, right? So they launch up, they put the payload, the booster comes back down, and it inverts and it lands, puts its little landing gear and lands kind of like, Space 1999 or Buck Rogers or something, right? But this one, it was a 3-stage rocket, or it had 3 boosters, a main chamber in the middle with the payload on top, and then 2 side boosters. Both of those guys came back down to the pad and landed simultaneously with pinpoint accuracy. I was like, I literally had to say yes, because it wasn't. And it was a weird feeling for me. It wasn't a, hey, this happened in America. This is where this was. Look at what science did. Right?
Technology is finally catching up to what they
right. This is what smart people, well-funded, albeit smart people,
self-funded,
well-funded, a little bit crazy, can do if you put your mind to it. But the thing I want to put to you guys was and this is what I was thinking when I was watching this, the imagery, because when I was active duty Air Force, I was stationed in Vandenberg, and our mission was to document space launches like Titans and all these things. And we used to fly in helicopters and shoot them. And I know what goes into documenting one of those things and the stresses that all that equipment has to withstand. These guys, we weren't even streaming back then. These guys launched this thing and streamed the entire thing, and they're still streaming the payload. The Rocket Man is still streaming back to Earth to YouTube, where anyone, even us, right now can watch it. So
live stream.
You guys, what do you guys think of that? I mean, I don't know. Am I just being too nerdy, or was this remarkable?
No, that was pretty remarkable.
No. I mean. Yeah.
I ended up watching Starman for almost 2 hours. I just had it on in the background and just watching the sun, the sunlight change around it, and the views of Earth in the background were just mesmerizing. It was really, really something.
It'd be interesting to see Spotify's hit count on or play count for David Bowie yesterday.
What was it? Was it ticking up? No, so is the car playing the David Bowie song right now? Or
that's what I understand.
Okay, so it is playing it, but in space it's a vacuum, so there's no sound.
There's no sound.
Just on the left.
In space, no one can hear David Bowie scream, right?
Well, it's a silent car anyway, so you're not going to hear the car as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's electric. Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to pay homage to that, and just the whole idea of how they were able, this week in photo tie-in is the idea that they were able to live stream this thing and shoot not only the launch, but stick the landing and document the landing. I mean, yeah, they lost the main booster, or it's
2 out of 3.
I don't know. Did they recovered it, right?
I haven't heard yet.
All I heard is that it missed it by 300 feet, I think, or 300 meters.
Oh.
And it came down pretty quickly. So,
they
haven't. I don't think they've given out an official statement yet, but that's what I sort of saw on the net this morning.
Yeah. So interesting. All right. Well, that's enough of that. So, audience, if you want to go check that out, just Google SpaceX and Falcon Heavy launch, and you'll see all the stuff. I think they have the launch on a loop on some of these YouTube channels. So it's pretty historic stuff there. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is not so positive. So did you guys see that story? I linked to it from Digital Photography News, and we'll put these links in the show notes. But there was this drone pilot who I believe is still at large, per se. Right. There was this drone pilot who posted footage of his drone dive bombing towards a landing passenger aircraft. And the footage looks like he was close to it. He was relatively close to it, right? So, Craig Colvin, let's start with you, man. I know you are a drone. You and I both are drone people, and you just got a new one. When you saw this footage, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
That the guy was an idiot. I mean, he's giving us all a bad name, right? Yeah. There were so many things he did wrong, right? You're not supposed to fly near any flying aircraft. You're not supposed to be near an airport. You're supposed to be below 400 feet, and it looked like he was way above that. So just someone doing something stupid.
Yeah. I mean, that could have ended badly if that thing got sucked in. I mean, for many reasons. Craig Stampley, are you a drone person? Do you fly these things?
I'm a drone wannabe. I desperately would love one. I don't have one yet. I did buy one years ago through a Kickstarter thing, and it never flew properly. So there's something in a box from about 4 years ago.
That sounds familiar.
But the DJI Mavic Air, I think it is, the new one. That's very appealing.
That's the one. That's the one Craig just bought. That one was just delivered, right, Craig? Yeah, of course you got to show it.
Here we go. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, whatever. And you got my color too. How dare you get TWiP red?
My sister-in-law over in the other side of the country, in a little mining town called Newman, she recently got a Spark. She's a photographer as well, and I think it's my brother that's flying it more than her at the moment. And it looks like any drone. I think I'd love to have.
Yeah, they are they're not kind on your wallet. Let's see.
Of course not.
But I mean, but they also let you do shots that you never were able to do before. Yeah. So it's a catch-22. Yeah, but this guy that flew that drone over the passenger aircraft broke all the rules, right? So there's the FAA rule of the drone must be in line of sight. Clearly, if this little drone is high enough to be above a commercial airliner, he can't see it. No. So he's breaking that rule. You don't fly around aircraft. You don't fly around airports, period. So he's making the rest of us look bad. He's basically making the rest of us guilty until proven innocent, right?
Yeah, right. Well, it's probably going to result in some new rules, they're already breaking the rules, but they're
breaking the rules, but these are people that the rules don't matter anyway. So you can't regulate against people who are not going to obey the most sensible of rules.
Right. So it's like gun control. It's like the law say you're not supposed to shoot people with guns, but people tend to do that too, right? So it's like you can make all the rules you want. The point is you can make all the rules you want. There's still going to be idiots out there that do the wrong thing.
Right. Well, but one of the things it does do, DJI has they added geofencing a year and a half ago, where they can prevent you from taking off if you're in a restricted area.
Yeah.
And this may result in more technology and software changes to prevent something like this from happening. again, it's going to affect everybody and not just, people near airports, perhaps.
Yeah, which means pretty soon you're going to be able to fly, in one little corner
drone park in the city.
Yeah, during certain times of day, on certain days of the week,
but that's if you buy
that drone.
Sorry,
no, go ahead, Craig.
I was just going to say that's if you buy a DJI drone. But from little I read online of this incident, they're saying it's probably a home-built one, or it's not a DJI one. So again, those rules or restrictions go out the door.
Yeah, DJI doesn't have a patent on UAV avionics or the technology it takes to put a drone in the air. That's free and clear for anybody to do anything with. And the other thing is with DJI's technology, it relies on your cell phone, I believe, because you fly them with your cell phone or your tablet, and it relies on its location in order to determine whether or not you're in a no-fly zone. Right? Which means you could not use that or turn it off or... so there's ways around everything, and idiots will find a way to break the rules, right? So it's just scary. We knew this was coming. I'm waiting for something, I'm not that I want this to happen, but I know something bad is going to happen where there's loss of life involved, and then that'll give lawmakers full ammo to regulate whatever they want around drones, saying that these people are causing, they're a health hazard. Kind of like with the airports and the shoe bomber. Now everyone has to take the shoes off to go to the airport. It'll be the same thing.
We don't in Australia.
Yeah. I know. It's sad. I'm excited about the whole technology of drones, but at the same time, it's just like, come on, man. All right, so that's enough about that. So we had happy stuff with the SpaceX, depressing stuff with the drone, and number 3 is the main thing. Let's just dive in, guys, because we're like 20 past hour. Literally, there you go. Let's just get our feet wet with the main topic. I got a million of them. Okay, so getting started. The title of this episode is "Getting Started in Underwater Model Photography," and when I think about this genre, I think I always, like, when I see both of you guys are posting in the TWiP Pro community, and I see your images, and every single one is stunning, and it's just, of course, that's, it's just amazing. And I always think, like, I want to try that, but okay, how do I do it? It feels beyond my reach, because, like, I got to find a pool to do it with. I got to find a model to do it. Then I don't have an underwater housing for any of my cameras. So I got to get an underwater housing. And then I got to learn, because the optics are different underwater. And then what about lighting? Do you bring strobe under there? I mean, if you bring strobe, do you plug it in? And if you plug it in, I heard electricity and water don't play well together. So, so and Craig Stanley, I'll throw it to you first, man. Okay. So getting started underwater model photography, couched in all the fears and the phobias that I just outlined. Yep. Am I being irrational, or have you gone through the same thing before you got to be an expert at this thing?
Well, I'm still not. I don't consider myself an expert. Proficient, yes. Probably my first attempt was an old iPhone 4 in a little plastic case, in a pool up north. Nice. On a family holiday, and then we were off Fraser Island in a catamaran and sort of trying to take photos underwater, and that sort of really spurred me on. The big mistake was buying one of those underwater bags that they're good for 6 or 7 meters, and I had one break or a seam split a few months ago, and that killed a 5D Mark II. So
see, that's my fear.
That's your fear. So don't buy a bag. You have to buy housing. I've chatted with Craig, and he's got a very, very good, a professional quality housing. That was beyond my budget. I've got a polycarbonate one that's good for 40 meters, which is more than what I need for my backyard or in the ocean where I'm snorkeling.
Yeah.
So you can get into it for less than a drone. I'll say that much.
Yeah. Less than a drone, but for what is it, $800 for like the Air, I can get that thing, and I can, notwithstanding all the restrictions, I can go fly anywhere at any time. Sure. Right? I can say, hey, we're done with this podcast. I'm going to run outside and do some drone shots. With underwater, it's not that simple. Right?
Oh, well, I've got a backyard pool, and all of my photos of models, that's in my backyard pool.
Okay. Nice.
And I will go, talking briefly about lighting. I use natural light. I'm using the sun. If it's a cloudy day, I get a nice softer light. If it's a bright, shiny day, you get all those shadows and ripples on the surface and on the bottom of the pool.
Wow!
So
you're not bringing no artificial light at all. It's all the sun. Nice.
It's all the sun. Yep.
Okay, very cool. Craig Colvin, what about you, man? I mean, the images, and we'll put the images in a gallery in the blog post for this episode, and obviously people can link over to your websites right now if they want to see what you're doing. But the same questions go to you. The fear of starting this and the risk of starting this kind of photography seems higher than most other genres in terms of loss of gear, getting hurt, finding people to do it. Like, set my fears at ease.
Okay, well, it's not quite that bad. I got started with.
Don't say that.
I rented a housing from Borrow Lenses that for my 5D Mark III, and that was my very first time just to see if I would like it. I rented it for. I had one model of a friend of mine who wanted to do a mermaid shoot and asked me to do that for her. I rented it. It was a little expensive to rent, so I said, "Well, I get it for 3 days." I booked 5 shoots during that 3 days and just fell in love with it. So then I went and looked for housing. So I initially looked at the bags because the housings are more expensive than my camera. But everyone I heard about the bag is that you're going to end up ruining your camera, so it ends up costing more anyway.
That's right.
You go with the bag. So go with a quality housing, and they have them for smaller cameras. You don't have to get them for a DSLR. I have one for a Canon G9 that I used to have back in the day. Perfectly, does a perfectly good job. I use natural light. Strobes are expensive for underwater, and it's tough. So I have been experimenting with that, but I'm just beginning to do underwater lighting. So I do natural light. I put a scrim across the entire surface of the pool so that I don't get the ripple reflections on the model.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a huge softbox. It's a 12-foot by 12-foot scrim that I just tie off and lay right across the top. So that helps with that. That's my lighting. And in a cloudy day, it's even softer lighting.
That's right.
Right.
And what's the production like? Is it for both of you guys? Is it just you and the model in the water, or do you have people there to make sure that she's okay, or to help pose and move the clothing, or like what does it look like?
I'll go first. For me, it's typically just me and the model. Me and the model, or maybe the model, or I've had another photographer who was trying to get into it, and she arranged actually a couple of models, and she brought over a whole bunch of wardrobe, and we had 2 or 3 models in the pool, and we just took turns shooting the model, and we would occasionally sort of move the clothing around. But the photos I sent through last week, that was me and the model on our own. She did bring a friend. She brought her partner, and so they were just off to the side waiting. And in the end, I got the partner in the pool as well.
Yeah, Craig, what about you? Like, what does it look like?
I'd say 75% of the time is just the model and myself. Yeah. A lot of it depends on what I'm shooting. If I'm doing, I did one when a wedding dress, and when a big dress gets really heavy, gets wet, it gets really heavy, and they can struggle with it. So I tend to have another person in the pool for that sort of shoot. I've also done some where I have props, and like they're one with like a tea party underwater, and so I'll have someone there. I have a couple friends local who are just they love to scuba dive, so they'll come and help me set things up, and they'll be there, kind of as a safety diver. But in general, it's just me and the model.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I see again another misconception is you've got a crew there, you got divers with snorkels underneath, making sure everything's okay. You got the makeup off to the side with underwater makeup, all this stuff, and you guys are just like ninjas in there, model, photographer, camera, memory card, in and out. Right. So timing wise, Craig Sampley, timing wise, how long are we looking at for one of these shoots from jump in the water to you're in, post processing?
Hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on the model. The one I did last week, she was. It's our summer here in Australia, so it's warm outside. My pool tends to be a little bit shaded, so it can get a little bit cool, particularly once you're in the water for an hour and a half. So we would hop out. She would change wardrobe. We stopped for lunch, and then we jumped in. But we were probably in the pool all up for about a little over 2 hours.
Wow!
And that was with 3 or 4 wardrobe changes.
That's wrinkly. That's wrinkly human skin after that. Yeah. Craig, what about you? Is it the same kind of time frame?
Most of mine, I try to do 3 hours. And that's and it is directly proportional to the temperature of the pool.
That's right.
Every degree
as we saw on your post in TWiP Pro, you put a model in an ice filled pool. Like what was this?
It was her pool. She said it was heated. It was probably 48 degrees.
Wow.
I lasted 10 minutes. She lasted 25 seconds.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, one word comes to mind: hypothermia.
Yeah. But typically, I heat the pool to between 85 and 88 degrees. And at that temperature, we can stay in for as many hours until they wear out. And
is this your pool as well?
This is my pool. Yes.
So both of you guys have backyard pools that you're working in, right? So you have an advantage over, a large percentage of the planet who don't have large bodies of water to throw people in. So what advice would you give to photographers? Craig, we'll start with you. Craig Colvin, we'll start with you. What advice would you give to a photographer that doesn't have a backyard pool? Yeah. And wants to maybe try this kind of photography?
So a couple of things. Find a friend with a pool. Lots of friends are willing to let you use their pool for this. Several models I use, they have their own pool as well. So that helps. And I have a couple of underwater photographer friends that use scuba dive centers during the day. Their classes are in the evening typically. And they're just sitting vacant, and they will rent the time in the scuba tank they have. It's an indoor pool typically. They're deep, deeper than you need, but and they're typically fairly well lit. So,
okay. Craig Sample, you have anything to add to that for people that aren't equipped with their own pool?
Essentially, that's the same. I'd say the same thing. You're gonna hopefully know somebody who's got a pool that doesn't mind. Again, you're only using it for a couple hours, or maybe the model knows somebody. So, with the other photographer that I worked with, I think she came across me. I'm not sure if it was on Instagram or Facebook, but I got a message. She said, "Look, you've got a pool. Any chance you could show me how to do this if I arrange the models?"
Oh,
sure, no problems at all.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what about people that live next to large bodies of water? Whether it's a lake or an ocean. Have you guys ever shot in natural bodies of water, or has it all been pools?
I'll jump in. We did a quick little family holiday last month. We went out to we're up in Bundaberg and went out to Lady Elliot Island, which is the southern tip of the Great Barrier Reef. And so we were snorkeling, shooting turtles, having a great time. And the camera went with me. My boys were having a great time. Can I have a turn now? And off we'd go. And they got a couple of nice photos of me. Normally I'm behind the camera, but snorkel down or dive down, 6 or 7 meters and look up, and there's the kids taking a photo.
That's so cool. That's cool. Yeah. Craig, what about you? Any thoughts on that? The natural bodies of water?
I haven't done it yet. I plan to. Around here, it's too cold.
It is, for
the water. But I am planning a trip to a tropical location.
Yeah.
It does for doing model photography. There's a little bit more logistics. You really do need someone else in the water, or you need a small boat, or raft or something that they can hold on to.
Definitely,
Definitely. In between takes. So that a little bit more logistics to work out, but very easy to do in almost all of these tropical locations.
Yes.
Right. All right, guys. Well, let's switch gears a little bit, because I want to talk about the legalities and dangers with this kind of photography. Like, if you're just going out and you're taking pictures of a landscape, Who cares, right? You take a picture, even portraits, you know, those sorts of things or whatever. But this kind of photography, it seems to me that there's another human that is potentially in harm's way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if she can't swim that well, or if she gets tangled up in the clothing, if something happens. Like what are you guys safeguarded? Is there like a special clause on the model release? Do you have them sign some sort of release? Or how do you cover that piece of it? Craig Stanford or Colvin, you go first.
Yeah. So I don't have any special thing, you know, liability release that I have them sign. I do have an umbrella policy that covers liability. So if something were to happen, I also am trained in CPR and make sure I stay current in that. So if something does happen, I do stress safety quite a bit when I do this, and we talk about it, for 15 minutes beforehand and during the shoot. If something they're not doing something I consider safe, we stop and correct it. So it's I have shot models who can't swim, and they do just fine. It takes a little longer.
I was going to ask about that. What do you do? I mean, you just stay in the shallow side.
Stay in the shallow end, right? Yeah. And they just dive down and are close to the bottom, and then so they can stand up at any time when they need to.
That's cool. Interesting. Sampley, what about you, man?
Similar. I do get a model release for any shoot. I have my own public liability insurance, so I'm covered there. But we do talk about safety. I try and find out, make sure that the model's comfortable, swimming, things like that. Most of them, I've had a couple that are ex-lifeguards, and one particular model, Katie, she was wonderful underwater. She just stays down there forever. And
it's a mermaid.
Absolutely. That one of the photos, not the one you've used, but there's another one where a girl in red, she's just fabulous. And we'd discuss a couple of poses. I'd duck down, and then she would come down, and I'm just snapping away because she's just so graceful.
Wow.
Others struggle with buoyancy. So they go down and they come straight back up. So you got to try and not coach them, but try and explain, all right, breathe out. You're going to go underwater without any air in your lungs, but you're not going to die. You're going to be fine.
Just fill their pockets up with rocks. You'll be fine. That's it, right?
Sure about that. Yeah.
Probably don't do that. If you're watching this, I'm joking. Don't do that.
I wear a weight belt, but I definitely don't let the models wear a weight belt. But typically we'll normally start off in the shallow end as well, and just try a few little poses, and then we'll work out. And my pool's not particularly. It's probably about 6 foot deep in the middle.
Now, the last question on this stuff is, like, have you guys had, either of you, Craig, Colvin, we'll start with you. Have you had any close call situations? Because I know you're a daring photographer, Craig. You look all mild mannered and nice and happy with the fluffy beard and everything. But
anything for the shot.
Torturer.
Yeah. Anything for the shot. No, I torture myself. I don't torture the models.
Yeah. Right.
No, I've had no close calls. I've now shot with roughly 35 models underwater, and nothing even remotely close to an issue.
Yep.
Okay. So I have a strict no drowning policy with the models, and I tell them that right out front. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to be mad at you if you drown. Right?
That's right. Sign here first. Similar. We do stress the safety. I haven't had any issues, and to be perfectly honest, I'll sometimes get one of my boys to jump in and do some, not pose. Well, I guess pose, but I want to try something. So, right, your turn now. Put the games down. Jump in the pool. I don't normally get too many complaints.
Yeah, I would imagine that. Yeah. All right, guys, let's switch gears. I want to talk a little bit about technique, and obviously the shooting underwater, light behaves differently than it's going to behave through normal air or clear air, right? Mm-hmm. Craig Stampley, what are some of the things that you have to be aware of when you're shooting underwater as underwater photographer? Is it filtration on the lens? I mean, aside from keeping your camera dry, from an optical, from an optical exposure standpoint, what are some of the things that you have to be aware of?
Probably the biggest thing is making sure the pool is crystal clear. I had a shoot a couple of months ago, and we'd actually had a lot of rain sort of over the weekend and a couple of days beforehand, and that really dragged a lot of dust into the pool. And as much as my pool's being filtered all the time, the dust in the water can really affect, the clarity affects what you get and how you focus. In fact, I rescheduled or brought back one of the models to do it again because I just wasn't happy with the images that I'd given her. And that's probably the big one. The other thing for me is I can't look at the viewfinder through my housing. I mean, this is what I use.
Oh wow! Look at that thing.
That's the little eyepiece there. You can use live view, but it's too slow. So I find I'm just sort of aiming at the middle, and my hit rate is relatively good. I'm pretty happy with where I'm aiming. Just a bit of practice and technique.
And how does focusing work? Is focus? Are you auto focusing underwater, or do you have to manual focus?
No,
how does that work?
Autofocus with I use back button focus. So I've just got my thumb on the button, and then I can just take the shot as I want. And I have it on AI focus rather than AI servo or one shot, and I've found that to be quite successful for me. Okay, interesting. And then filtration on the front wall on that housing. That doesn't look like you put any filtration. No, there's nothing on
inside.
There.
Maybe
nothing inside. I just use the lens as it is.
Okay.
What you find is as you go deeper, obviously the colors change, and that's where you've got your red filters and things like that. But even in 6 feet of water, you'll get a slightly different color cast, and you just have to correct that in post.
Yeah. I know. I was talking to Eric Chang, underwater photographer, and the deeper you go, obviously everything changes down there. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it gets, and the more challenging it gets to create saleable images. Craig Colvin, what about you, man? I mean, are you doing anything special to your camera to get right exposure?
I shoot in manual when I'm underwater. I've tried shooting in aperture priority, and it just doesn't tend to. It tends to pick up other, either the background or the reflections from the surface or whatever. And so I shoot in manual. I use a wide-angle lens. I want to be close to the subject. The less water you have between yourself and the subject, the clearer it's going to be.
That's very true.
So. You don't want to use a telephoto or even a medium distance lens. I tend to be, I shoot between 17 and 40 millimeters when I'm shooting underwater.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, I would think, just again, layman observation, I would think that having all that water between you and your subject would almost act as a lens and would screw things up in terms of where you're trying to focus, and you have to overcompensate or undercompensate or something.
It acts as a lens, but because you're focusing through the lens on a DLSR, for example, it compensates for that. So the focus distance is exactly whatever distance they happen to be, even though they're magnified a little bit.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. So the water does magnify them in the image. But you're seeing in the viewfinder or live view or just by being the right distance, you're going to get the right size of get the entire model back in.
And it's a foregone conclusion that you both are shooting in RAW, right? So that you have complete control over the colors afterwards, and when you're processing. Are you both processing? I've been listening to Canadians all day. Yeah. Are you both processing? That's American mispronunciation. Are you both processing in Lightroom? Or are you using Capture One, or how are you doing it?
I use Lightroom.
Colvin?
Yeah.
Lightroom?
I do Lightroom, and the first two things I do are the color temperature and the new dehaze slider that is in Lightroom. The dehaze makes a world of difference.
Really? It's like wiping the haze off of the image, right?
Right. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Similar with me. Lightroom with me, get the right color temperature. And that's with either finding a white spot on a dress or something like that, just with the eyedropper. And that's my starting point, and then I'll tweak it depending on the effect I want. And then I just round trip through Photoshop. And then that content aware little tool gets rid of lots of little bubbles.
So okay, and this is great because I'm learning so much from you guys. I hope the listeners in the chat room is buzzing too. So the next question is, looking at your work, for both of you guys, and Craig Stampley, I'll start with you to answer this. How do you come up with your concepts? Like, what's the process? Are you just kind of like, sitting there watching Game of Thrones and you're like, oh, that would be a cool image, and you make a note and then you go do it? Or do you find a model and then just kind of wing it and come up with some shots? What's your process?
The second way, just get a model, throw her in there and figure out what's going to work.
Really?
No, we have a bit of an idea. I'll have a bit of an idea of some of the poses I want to try. The one with the chair, that's that Christine Keeler one that I just always like that pose, so I'll try and incorporate that wherever I can. So I've had a couple of different models sit on that chair. I'll save images. You'll find something, and I've got a little folder on my desktop, and I'll just drag it in there, and I'll just show the models. I say, look, we'll try something like this or this, and half the time it's the models as well. They'll come up with the way they float, depending on how comfortable they are in the water, is how at ease they tend to be. The maternity shoot I had with that one woman, she was 31 or 32 weeks pregnant. This is her fourth child, and she just enjoyed lying there in the water, just feeling weightless. And
those is that one of the ones you posted in TWiP Pro?
I think so originally, quite a while ago. Oh, sorry, a few weeks ago. The ones that I posted a couple of days ago, that's just from last week with the other model. But it's for me, I try to start off away from the model and just work my way in and get closer and closer, just once they've got comfortable with me. Craig mentioned that he shoots in manual. I shoot in aperture priority. So here's a difference again. So I normally set my aperture between 4 and 8, and I'll let the camera do the work for me.
Shutter speed,
Because again, I'm not looking at the camera itself. I'm just trying to point it, get down low enough to point up or down, or I'm moving around quite a lot. So there's another difference for you. Yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. What about Craig Colvin? We'll switch over to you. What about wardrobe in corner, kind of, because yours, there's some elaborate flowing fabric in there, and it works well with the water. Like, how do you come up with that?
So I go to Goodwill every Tuesday, and they get
why Tuesday? That's when the stuff
they have a discount. They have a discount on Tuesday. It's already cheap, but I can get a lot more.
I was going to say, it's like it's already cheap, so you get a discount on the discount.
Right. So I have probably at this point 60 different outfits that I've bought over the past months from Goodwill, and I look for ones that are long and flowy, and
that's right.
Are gonna. You don't want anything tight fitting. The looser it is, and the more fabric there is, the better it's going to look underwater.
Maternity dresses are good for that.
Yep.
Maternity dresses, you say?
Right, and you put them on a small model too. And
absolutely,
it's just going to billow and look lovely.
Yeah.
Is that the only place you get them from? Is Goodwill is your main source, Craig?
I do. I do have some of my models are actually designers, and they bring their own outfits that they've designed, and they know they're going to be doing an underwater shoot, so they will custom make one. With that. And then I also use a lot of fabric. I will go and buy 4 to 6 yards of various color fabrics, and we'll incorporate that into the shoot as well. It's very challenging. It takes a lot of shots when you're using fabric, because it just has a mind of its own. So you may take 100 shots and you'll get 2 or 3, really good ones out of that.
They're all in focus, but just the composition doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Craig Stampley, what about you? Are you a Goodwill secondhand store shopper too? I don't know, dude. What's the equivalent of Goodwill in Australia? Do they have Goodwill there?
We have St. Vincent de Paul's, and probably the big one is Salvation Army, Salvos.
Okay.
So so we do the same. I don't have a big wardrobe for the models. I have a few scarves and things like that, but quite often, because I haven't been doing it as long as Craig has, I'll suggest the model, what to bring, or they'll have an idea. They've got a particular dress or something like that, and they'll bring their clothes. And so I just set off part of my garage where I've got a bathroom. I'll just put up a backdrop. They can go behind there and get changed. I'll fiddle around somewhere else, and we'll just, we'll shoot for 20, 30 minutes and then, right, let's take a break, go change and try something else.
I love it. Sounds like so much fun. And this genre of photography is so interesting because anything that takes a little extra effort to do it's unexpected. You see these images come through your Instagram feed where you're used to seeing, people's lunch or even model shots or selfies or whatever. And then you see these things and it's like, whoa, is that real? That's it's amazing. All right. Any parting shots that you guys want to leave to people that are considering doing this kind of photography before we move into the Q&A in the chat?
I would say give it a try.
Definitely give it a try.
It is a lot more fun than you would think. And you get hooked on it and just
definitely.
Definitely give it a try.
All right. So
I was answering messages this morning at 6:30 for a model that wants to book me already, because again, they've seen the photos. I guess not too many people do it here where I am. And
right.
Saw your photos. When can I book you? It's like, oh, okay, already. Can I get out of bed first type thing? So that's the encouraging thing. That's the really, because I do it because I enjoy it. And sometimes it's a TFP for a model's portfolio or even just for mine. When you can get paid for it, it's even better.
Where are you finding your models at, Craig Stampley? Is it like
Facebook and Instagram.
Facebook and Instagram.
I don't contact models. They've been contacting me. So,
every model wants to do underwater photography.
Yeah,
and it's amazing. I put out I own Facebook. There was a modeling group there, and I just said who would like to do underwater photography, and I had 35 responses in half an hour.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, but let's just be realistic with that, right? So you get 35 responses. That's after they've gone to your website and they see the amazing body of work of shots that you've done. If there's a person that hasn't done this,
they still would love to do underwater photography. Yep. So you will probably have to find one who, a friend of yours that wants to do it, but just to get some sample shots. But even then, every one of them wants to, it's so unique and so hard for them to find someone to do it.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why it's so popular with them.
Yeah. It feels like it. Oh, go ahead, Craig.
Oh, I was just going to say that the fact that you've got the subject floating there or moving, however, in the pool, and you can get different angles. I mean, you can be side on, looking down. I've had the models swim straight over the top of me. Them reaching across, and you can get such a diverse range of poses because the light's there, but you're moving all around the model in different positions. You end up with just different looks. That's what I really find enjoyable.
Right. Yeah, when I think underwater photography, you guys saw that gag photo I posted in TWiP Pro. I always think of that Nirvana album cover. From the Nevermind album with the baby in the pool chasing the dollar bill. I always think about that shot. I think you guys should recreate that shot. You can do it.
Well, you come to Brisbane, Frederick, and I'll happily take your photo. How's that?
People don't want to see that. They don't want to see that. No, I don't even want to see that. All right, guys. Well, this has been great. Let's dive into the chat room. There's a bunch of people in here. Look, Sharky James from the Pedal Pixel Photography Podcast is in there. What's up, Shark? Hey, sharks in water. Look at that. That's why he's in there. Wow. He's circling in there. Look at that. All right. So let's see. Here's a question. This one is from Trevor Pinocchi, and Trevor says, are there any things that work on land that don't work underwater in terms of optics, like issues with color, straight lines, etc.? Kind of what I was talking about before, but go ahead and you guys want to tackle it?
So, right, the color balance is going to be an issue. Even adjusting the white balance on the back of your camera, it is tough to get it to look natural. I am constantly playing around with that, and I can get it close, but it doesn't really work. So you really do need to shoot in RAW.
Yeah.
I have done a couple where I use a striped background that has these vertical lines underwater, and I did get a little bit of curvature, but not much. But that's more because of the lens. I'm shooting a wide angle lens, and I don't really think that affects it. In general, it's more about getting the least amount of water between you and the subject. right? On land, you don't have to worry about that as much. That's probably the biggest difference.
Anything to add to that, Craig?
Yeah, with my particular backyard pool, it's quite rounded, so those curves tend to get not so much exaggerated, but I think what I was probably surprised about the most was how big even a medium-sized backyard pool, how big it ends up looking. I've got two lenses that I typically use, either a 24 to 105 or a 24 to 70, and I shoot at 24. So that's where that's as far as wide as I go. I've got a 16 to 35 that I might try, but at the moment it's 24 because that's wide enough to get what I need. I can still sort of typically I will start off a little bit away from the model, and as she gets comfortable with me, I'll get closer because we want to build up a rapport. You don't want somebody sort of bumping up against them all the time.
Sure.
But yeah, I definitely agree. Getting close to the model, there's going to be less graininess in the final result.
Right.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Let's move on. Yeah. Let's see. Trevor saying D Hayes is your friend. Yes, we all agree with that. Adrian Revel says love the new TWiP. Thank you. I love the new TWiP too. Let's see. Who else? Brian Fisher, who is a TWiP host of TWiP Glam, is asking, do you guys have any workshops planned? Underwater photography workshops?
Ooh.
I am working on that. It's probably going to be towards the end of the summer. And I'm working on one in a tropical location. I've been scouting several places for that.
You sound so secretive about that. You're like in an undisclosed location.
Well, a lot of it, as I said, there's a lot of logistics when you're right. It'll either be in the Caribbean or Hawaii someplace, or maybe Mexico, where the water is going to be warm enough to not have an issue. Or maybe Australia, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
But, there you go. Great Barrier Reef, Great Barrier Reef.
I haven't thought any about doing any in the pool, but that's certainly an option. I may work on that.
Yeah, that's food for thought.
Right.
All right. Next question is from Good Dog. Good Dog says, "What's the market like for these types of images?" That's a great question, because in another an add-on to this, I'll tack on to Good Dog's question is, are you guys just doing this as amateurs, like for the true sense of the word amateur means for the love of, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that you're any less good than a pro. It just means you don't do it for money. Are you both doing this as amateurs or for the love of, or are you doing it for money?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do a lot. I do a lot more trade with this than any other photography that I do, just because I love it. It is just so much fun to. I have been known to do 2 shoots a day for 5 days of the week.
I remember you doing that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I did that for 3 weeks in a row just because I loved it. It's just so much fun. There is a market for it, though. I know several photographers are doing it. Maternity is very popular underwater. Senior portraits underwater, because that's unique. There's a big market for that as well.
Are we talking high school seniors?
High school seniors.
We're talking high school seniors. Okay. Not
octogenarians.
Okay. All right. Cool. Craig, did you have anything? Craig Stampley, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the maternity's fun. I think just the fact that they enjoy being weightless for that little while. It's just comforting and soothing, particularly towards the end of a pregnancy. I've got friends in the Middle East, and I'm trying to convince them to bring me over so I can shoot their daughter's senior photos. Not sure if it's going to work just yet, but I keep hinting.
If it's towards the end of the pregnancy, that could be really interesting if things go sideways.
I tell them no live births in the pool, you're out.
Yes, have a midwife on standby. Absolutely. If they're like in the 8th month,
That's right.
All right, here's the next question from Sharky James from the Petapixel Photography Podcast. He says,
"Sorry, who's that?"
Sharky James from the Petapixel Photography Podcast. He says, "I would like to know about getting sharp images underwater. Does image stabilization help or hurt? And is hand-holding more difficult?" That's an interesting question. I never thought about that. Would you ever consider putting a camera on a tripod underwater?
I have for a couple shots where I wanted to do some compositing, but in general, it's handheld is just fine.
Yeah, you got to be moving around.
We're shooting at high enough shutter speed that it's not really that much of an issue.
Yeah,
you don't really need the stabilization, and so you don't really need a tripod. No. By the way, you read Sharky's name, but that question was actually from Trevor Panaki.
Oh, did I read it? Yeah, that was Trevor. Sorry, Trevor. Yeah, that was yours. Yes, I had Sharky on my brain. Right. Looking at we'll do Sharky's next. Okay, cool. All right, Craig Stampley, any image stabilization or support underwater?
No, I've thought about it again for like what Craig was saying for composites and things, but mine's all handheld. I mean, you're in a body of water, so you can't be moving around fast anyway. The 24 to 70 I have isn't image stabilized anyway. 24 to 105 I think is, and I'll have it switched on, but I haven't noticed any differences.
Yeah. Interesting. There's so much stuff to play with, long exposures and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so Trevor's question was, I would like to know about getting sharp image. Oh, no, that was the one I just read. Sharky's question was, aside from worrying about a breach of whatever is protecting your camera, what's the next biggest concern? He sounds like security. So a breach in terms of the underwater housing. Right. Like in terms of security, what's the next biggest concern? The light?
My model.
Yeah, the model. Just the safety of the model, right? I use props quite often. I had a shoot where I wanted to put the model in a cage. That's a concern. So that's
a big concern.
Right. It is a bit. Yeah. So just and get them getting wrapped up in fabric or wrapped up in whatever props you may be using is the concern.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now the other is I do see a lot of underwater photographers that are using strobes, and they use them on the surface. Like they'll use a big power pack or alien bees or that sort of thing on the surface. And they say, and they use a battery pack, saying, well, it's safe because it's not hooked up to the main. Yeah. But the capacitor in that strobe is charged, and if it were to fall in the water, it's going to discharge no matter what. So I have used some lights, but I keep them well back from the edge of the pool and on little bitty short stands, so that even if they were to fall, they're still going to fall 2 feet from the pool.
That could end badly. That could definitely end badly.
Are you using those as constant lights, Craig, or have you got a trigger to flash them?
I'm trying to get a trigger. There's a company that makes a Pocket Wizard float. The radio signals will not travel through the water. So it is. I have a cable and this float. It's been back ordered for 9 months, so I don't know that I will ever get it. So I'm exploring other options now. I actually use. This is a Rotolight.
And
you can adjust the color temperature and all that. And I put it in a iPad plastic case that you would put make an iPad waterproof, and just put it in that. And I have a couple of these, and can light it up that way when I need to.
That's so cool.
Looking at the Loom Cubes are waterproof.
Yep, I use those as well.
Yeah, I've got an idea, and I was thinking of a Loom Cube.
Right.
Loom Cube for one of those.
They have to be really close to the model. I've
had they're some so small, right?
Where they hold it in their hands and lighting their face that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are excellent, though. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, guys, let's move on. So next question is from Mark Harris. He says, have either of the Craigs painted... Oh, either of the Craigs, okay. Have either of the Craigs painted their pools specifically for photography?
Ooh, that would be tough to do. No.
So I have not painted my pool. If I ever do resurface my pool, I am going to make it be a black bottom pool as opposed to the white.
Yeah.
But I use backdrops.
Yep.
So I have colored backdrops that I will. They're huge. One of them is 20 feet by 40 feet, and I just drape that along the entire side of the pool and weight it down at the bottom, and that becomes my backdrop.
Yep. Yeah, I've played with some black backdrops as well.
Nice. There's so much to play with. All right, here's another question, guys, from Megan. Megan says, iPads and iPhones in cases can be waterproof, but you can't control the screen underwater. Any tips? That's a good point. Capacitive touch doesn't work underwater. So what do you do?
Well, no, but you can get a case that you press a button and it touches the essentially the shutter on the particular photo app. The one I bought again went for a couple of years ago. The phone went in. You had to download their app. When you turned it on, it had basically little buttons on the screen, and then you had corresponding buttons on the case. So basically, the capacitive touch is going straight through, and it wasn't particularly expensive. $60 on eBay or something like that.
Interesting. I like the lighting underwater. Obviously my as a layman, I'm thinking, no way would I plug in anything near water, period. I don't care. The only power that I would bring out there, especially as a new photographer or a photographer that's new to this genre, would be the battery inside my camera. That's it. That's it. If that gets fried, nobody's sad except the bank account, right? So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, lots of good questions in here, guys. So let's move out of this segment and move into the last thing, and that's the picks of the week. I'm bringing that back. So the picks of the week, this is the first pick of the week that TWiP has done in 2018. You guys are the first ones. So
it went over a year.
Yeah. Almost a year. Yeah. So Craig Colvin, I'll let you go first. What's your pick of the week?
All right, I'm going to do two of them. I'm going to say
all right, good.
The Rotolight. Even if you don't do underwater photography, this is still just a great light. It's battery powered. You can adjust the color temperature of it. It's really bright. They make two sizes of it. This is one designed to mount on top of your camera, but they make a much larger one as well. And it's a great continuous light source. So that's the first one.
All right, cool.
Very cool. And then the other one, I'm going to do this, is the Magic Air.
You had to do it.
I had to do it.
You had to go there.
So, Craig, if you put that in a bag, you could have underwater drone photography. How's that?
There you go. Exactly. There's a Kickstarter for an underwater drone, a little submarine that you can control from the surface. Cool.
Yeah, there's actually shipping products like that, but like you said, radio signals don't travel underwater, so
you have to have a cable that tracks behind.
They have a really long cable, which it makes sense underwater anyway. Like if you fly a drone and lose it, there's a chance that you could go find where it landed underwater. Yeah, probably not so much.
Pull on a cable.
Yeah, it's down there with Leonardo DiCaprio somewhere.
That's the one.
All right, cool. Is that it, Craig? Just those two things that I want
for now. That'll.
All right, Craig Stampley, your first picks of the week pick of the week.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to go something that's possibly in between those two in price range, and because it was last minute, I'll go with the underwater housing that I use. And this is manufactured by a company called Micon. Comes out of Hong Kong, and for me, it was about $1,000 delivered. Free delivery, but about $1,000. I got an optional port on the front. They make a range for various cameras. So you buy it for the camera that you've got and a particular lens that you have. And so far, it's been really good to use. No problems at all. There's on the inside, there is a water detector. So if you happen to have a slow leak or water gets in, it just bridges a circuit right down to the bottom of the housing. Very loud beep. And a red light flashes.
And you
can quickly get out of the water.
Yeah, get out of the water, save your gear. Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, so I was very, very impressed with that.
And what camera body did you say you're shooting with, Craig?
I'm using a 5D Mark III, Canon 5D Mark III, and either a 24-70 or a 24-105.
Oh, okay, cool. Easy, simple. Put in the housing and go. Aperture priority and rocket, right?
Yeah, let's say there's a little bit more to it than that, but essentially, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Here's another question that came in while you guys were talking. Let's see. This is from Vic. Vic, you got it. Yeah, what is he saying? Any of you shoot with a Nikonus 5?
Yeah, I'm a Canon.
I guess that's no. You're a Canon, right? Yeah, that's a purpose-built underwater Nikon camera, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't shot with that either. I have to look for underwater housings for the Panasonic Lumix GH5. Let's see if there's a underwater housing for that guy, and I'll give this a shot. Craig, I may have to come down to San Jose and hang out with you and
anytime. As soon as it gets warm, I'm going to be shooting every day.
All right, I'm down there. Yeah. I'm down there. I'll bring the food and beer, and we'll go for it in the pool. All right. Sounds good. All right, guys. Thank you both so much. It's been a really good episode. Lots of good tips, lots of good interaction in the chat. This is obviously a podcast for those folks that are watching. So the podcast version of this show will be posted to This Week in Photo. You can subscribe at thisweekinphoto.com/subscribe. If you want to connect with these guys, head over to TWiP.pro. That's our brand new community for TWiP. That's where I met Mr. Stampley in there and found out about all of his amazing work. And now he's on the show. Look at that. So yeah, if you want to head over there, there's a 2-week free trial. After that, it's about $5 a month for that. If you want to stalk these guys directly, you can get Craig at craigcolvinphotography.com. And Craig, you're at Stampfly. That's STAMPFLI.photography. You're one of the first, Craig, you're one of the first people that I've known to use the .photography domain. So brave man.
Very brave. So, yeah. Occasionally it doesn't work. So you got to type in your email address and it's not recognized. So I go back to my old default one. But, I've had it for about 3 years now, 3.5 years.
Nice.
Oh, nice. So it should be settled in by now. All right, but we'll link to all these. We'll put links to this in the, like I said, in the blog post and also the description for this episode. And all this stuff will be at thisweekinphoto.com. So head over there for this episode and all of our previous ones and all the next ones. Next week, I have something pretty interesting planned for the show. I can't talk about it yet because the guests that I want to have co-host that show with me have not confirmed. You know who you are. And I'll give you a hint. Ladies, you know who you are. You haven't confirmed yet. But once they do, I'll reveal all. It should be a really, really interesting episode. All right. That's it for this episode of This Week in Photo. It is time to take that lens cap off.